Larry, it's been an extremely busy day on both coasts of the United States, but we are back with a late edition of the Citizens Grand Jury. How are you tonight, Larry?
I'm doing fine, Jason. Doing fine. Lots of breaking developments. We're waiting to see whether we have war in Ukraine. Putin's trying to provoke one over there as we speak. Apparently, some of his surrogates shelled a children's school trying to provoke and give a reason to get into a war, much like Lyndon Johnson did with the Bay of Pigs, with the Gulf of Tonkin years ago. So all countries do this. They play the game. But we won't get into the Ukraine at this point, although we may have to in the future with Biden. But today we're here with regard to Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and John Brennan, who are implicated in a huge scheme to spy on President Trump that has been confirmed by the special counsel, John Durham, however late, years late. And I want people to understand something here, is that we will be pursuing these criminals. We will be pursuing them in our citizens' grand juries. And we're going to start to do that today because you're going to lay out the facts of what we know so far. And we're thankful to have you, Jason, because you're very, very articulate. But I want them to also understand that Hillary Clinton will never be indicted, not by anyone in the government, but we will seek her indictment in our citizens' grand juries. She's a protected species. And the Republicans know that if they go after her, she's got enough dirt on them, as we know from the Filegate case many, many years ago, and it's continuing. We can see with, her people that do her bidding for her, people at Perkins Coie law firm, people otherwise who spied on the president of the United States, Donald Trump, that they'll have blowback. So you just simply won't see it. And the Attorney General of the United States will never allow Durham, because he's got to sign off on it, to indict Hillary Clinton. Consequently, we're going to have to do the job ourselves at our citizens' grand juries. We will seek her indictment. I'm confident we'll get it. Grand jurors are watching this show right now, and it is a show of the law, of their right under the laws of nature and nature's God to mete out justice, as it says in our Declaration of Independence, as I've said many times. But in addition to that, we have no choice. And for those people out there who are observing what we're doing in our citizens' grand juries and our Third Continental Congresses, and you can see a hat with that. Last July 5th and 6th, we held a first session at Independence Hall in Philadelphia, where we are debating, and we will declare independence and form a new government, not a new nation, but a new government with honest leaders, and make some fine tunes to the Constitution, taking away immunity from federal judges and Supreme Court justices and government officials is just one example, is that we, the American people, must do it for ourselves. Now, you have the Republicans out there fundraising, including consultants for President Trump, giving the impression that President Trump is going to run for president again, so therefore they need money. They're going to try to empty out your pockets at a time that you need your own money when inflation is high and we have this economic deprivation. But I want people to understand this, is that even if President Trump should make a comeback, and in the likely event he wins, and you can bet that a rabid leftist prosecutor in New York, the district attorney and the attorney general, will have him indicted in about a year for alleged tax fraud and tax evasion. It'll probably be a phony indictment, but just this week, President Trump's accountants and the accountants of the Trump Organization quit. And they stated that they cannot verify the accuracy of any of his financial statements and tax filings. They obviously have been given immunity by the prosecutors in New York. They're obviously going to be called to testify against President Trump. This will tie him down to the point that he can't run, because him and his family, will probably be Don Jr. and Eric, will be indicted as executives of the Trump Organization. And they'll be before a New York jury. They're going to wait a year to do it because they want it to come into the election cycle. Now, the Democrats have no compunction about doing things like this because they're pure evil. And they don't really care. They're like Putin. They don't care what people think. They're just going to knock Trump out. But even if he came back in 3 years, we cannot survive another 3 years with brain dead Joe Biden and with the cackling witch Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and the rest of them are doing the bidding of the radical left and have all but destroyed this country in the last year. And then last but not least, Republicans are selling the notion, because they want money too, and they want power. You get emails every day, I'm sure everybody does, that they're going to take control of Congress again in the midterm elections. I want people to understand that even if they should win the House of Representatives back, notwithstanding the fact that they have an idiot as the future speaker, Kevin McCarthy, who even said publicly that the Benghazi investigation was just all about politically damaging Hillary Clinton. That's the kind of person who was the Speaker of the House. But even if you have a Republican Senate, there'll be a filibuster. And President Biden, for the next 3 years, or whoever succeeds him, if he passes away in office, doesn't wake up one morning, either from natural causes or something the Democrats give him, he'll have a veto. A Democrat president can veto anything the Republicans do. And then you have to override it with 60 votes. Same as for a filibuster. So the Republicans are selling smoke and mirrors. They will not reinstitute good things that President Trump did. And President Trump, simply put, ain't coming back. And that's why it's so important to mete out justice ourselves peacefully and legally with our citizens' grand juries, where we have a right, as Justice Scalia wrote in 1992 in a case United States versus Williams, the grand jury belongs to the American people, not the three branches of government. We will try, we will seek convictions, and we will ask established law enforcement and the military to carry out the sentences, and they're about ready to do it. They've had it. They continue to be killed in droves, maligned, abused. Believe me, if we get a conviction and sentencing, they'll carry it out. And that's where we are. And then, of course, we need to declare independence and set up a new honest government, because this government's not honest. Do not be fooled by what Durham is doing. Durham, like all the rest, will perhaps indict one or two or a few more people at the lower or middle level to justify all the money he spent all these years. But he will not go after Hillary, because if he does, the Clintons, he may meet the same fate as Jeffrey Epstein, and they're not going to do that. Plus, he gets blowback, and his reputation will be totally destroyed. So people need to understand the facts of life here, and that's what's so important with what Freedom Watch is doing today with its citizens' grand juries and our Third Continental Congresses, because if we don't do it, no one else will. The bottom line is this: most people in this country, and this is the title of the sequel to my book, It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry, which you can get now, it just came out, not just at Amazon.com and all the major booksellers, but with a contribution of $50 or more, you can get that book. And you can get both my books. It Takes a Revolution, It Takes a Counter-Revolution, because we're now in a counter-revolution. The left has taken total control of this country. You can get them for a contribution of $100 or more, tax deductible, which allows us to do our work because it's expensive. We'll send it to you. And as an example of just one expense is that we have a venue, we have a judge, and between April 20 and 22nd of this year, we will be trying Joe Biden, his son Hunter, and his brother James for massive bribery from communist China, Ukraine, and Russia. We will be trying Joe Biden for negligent homicide in Afghanistan, for not only creating the condition where 13 of our brave heroes were killed at Kabul airport, but sending a drone strike right thereafter into 10 of our Afghan allies, killing 7 of their young children, doing so at a minimum negligently because he wanted to look tough for political purposes after our 13 GIs were killed. We will be trying Fauci, Dr. Anthony Fauci, otherwise known as either Dr. Frankenstein or Dr. Mengele. You might remember Mengele, that was Hitler's doctor who's experimented on people. And this is a fact. He collaborated with the communist Chinese over COVID-19. He, Obama, and Biden sent the money to do gain-of-function research. They knew, or should have known, that that lab is a military lab and creates bioweapons, and a bioweapon was released, destroying much of the United States and much of the world with millions of people dead. This guy is a major, major criminal. And it's not just Larry Klayman who says that, happens to be the son of former Attorney General Bobby Kennedy during the Kennedy years, who wrote a book. It's called The Real Anthony Fauci. I've had him on my radio show, Freedom Watch USA.org. You can listen to it, Radio America, who called Fauci the greatest criminal of the 20th century. This is a Kennedy who said that. And he proves it in a very well-written and documented book. And that will be presented at the trial, along with other information that we've obtained. So Jason, I want to turn it over to you. You're very articulate. You're an excellent investigator. You're great with audiovisual, as people know. And I want you to lay out the new information that has come forth with regard to Mrs. Clinton and others concerning the illegal surveillance on President Trump. And wrapped up in that illegal surveillance is a law firm by the name of, I call it Perkins Coie. Hannity calls it Perkins Coie. And this is something which needs to be dealt with and discussed, because if we don't do it, no one else will do it. Just so happens that one of the lawyers mentioned in the recent filing by the special counsel is a guy named Mark Elias, who happens to be defense counsel as well with regard to my case on behalf of Judge Roy Moore in Alabama, when he was defamed falsely as a pedophile, someone who sought women at malls, and he was banned for sex. This was a put up in the 2017 elections, is that we have reason to believe that Perkins Coie was involved in this as well, and that Elias was also involved in a capacity that went beyond him being simply a lawyer. He is a consultant, according to documentation out there on the internet, for a group called Senate Majority PAC, which is funded by at least $26 million by George Soros. So we're looking into that, and we may be seeking, his disqualification under conflict of interest in that case. This guy is the architect of the campaigns that are occurring by the Democrats, not just in court, but we also believe outside of court, to destroy anyone who challenges this administration. So let's carry on, Jason. Lay it out for the American people. What goes around comes around, and Hillary Clinton now is on the hot seat. I understand that you actually went to visit with her later today. You can show a video clip earlier today. She will not be touched. She's untouchable, not by the government, but she will be legally touched by us, peacefully and legally, because in Washington, D.C., and around the state capitals, there's an unwritten truce between the parties. You don't gore my axe, I don't gore yours. The elites walk off scot-free, and lower level people wind up getting indicted as the sacrificial lamb. But the Hillary Clintons of the world are a protected species. Anyway, let her rip, Jason. Let's see your video of when you confronted her earlier today.
Before I show that, Larry, I just wanted to ask one question, because I don't think I realized that you were opposing Mark Elias. That's huge news. Isn't it correct that he's left Perkins Coie and he started this Elias Law Group?
That's right. I believe that he either was forced to leave or got out on his own because the heat in the kitchen was too hot after his partner, Michael Sussman, was indicted by the special counsel. He is defending Senate Majority PAC and Waterfront Strategies in a case that we brought against them for allegedly defaming Judge Roy Moore. I mean, they did defame them. It was despicable. This case is going to trial in August. Stay tuned. I'm handling this in my private capacity. Judge Moore is a good man. He's a righteous man. And this, I believe, was a put up, to take him down. I know that's the fact, when he ran for the Senate in 2017 in a special election against Doug Jones. And he narrowly lost. And what they did was, frankly, just an evil attempt to destroy a man. And it's destroyed him, not just politically, it's destroyed himself emotionally and his family and everything else. And it's a terrible, terrible thing. And we know that Elias, they're on a privilege log. There are documents that are going to him. And we believe that he was the architect of what went on. And we're seeking discovery in that regard with the court. The court hasn't ordered the deposition yet, but we've asked the court to consider that. And he is a lawyer on the case. So I also believe that they brought him in kind of like a shield, to be able to claim attorney-client privilege.
Well, let me just unwind this for people, because you're getting into some technical explanations that lay people might not understand. When you're talking about discovery, That's the part of the lawsuit where we've been through the motion to dismiss, the claims survive, and now the opposing sides have an opportunity to seek evidence, which is finding people's emails and phone calls. And when something's on a privilege log, that means you have not been able to see these communications because they are privileged communications, something like attorney-client privilege, or the guy said something to the priest in confession, and they tell you this is a privileged communication, so you know a communication occurred, but you don't have access to it.
Well, this is a guy that when he left, Perkins Coy, or Cooey, however you want to call it, after the heat got too hot in the kitchen with regard to his partner, Michael Sussman, who was indicted for allegedly making false statements to the FBI. He was there allegedly on behalf of Hillary Clinton, and that was not disclosed. It's alleged that he lied about it. This is a guy who went out on the internet, and you can find it, and boasted that his law firm was focused on destroying Donald Trump. Okay, just so you know, does two and two equal four? Do bears live in the woods? Do fat dogs give off gas, for lack of a better word? I mean, this guy, we believe, was the architect of what happened against Roy Moore in Alabama in 2017. And so he comes in as a lawyer, we've alleged, because they want to have that shield as to what went on so they could withhold documentation under claim of attorney-client privilege. We've asked the judge to look at some documents in camera, and we'll see where it goes, and also have a number of depositions planned. But I don't want to take all of our time up on this private legal matter, but it is relevant because you see, in John Durham's recent filing, he refers to the Perkins Coy law firm without identifying them, and he refers to Elias as being potentially at the center of what's been going on as well. So all these characters, they show up in different places, but their one goal is to destroy conservatives, Republican candidates, and others who they disagree with, who they think may be a threat to their total leftist takeover of this country.
Exactly. And just to clarify a few more points, when you ask a judge to review something in camera, the judge is looking at it in their chambers. The lawyers don't necessarily get to see it. But if there is something in there, the judge will bring it forward. I have another question, though, about Elias, Larry.
This is a good judge in Alabama. His name is Judge Mays. And we believe that he will play it straight, okay, in this regard. There are very few in this country. You'll note in my book, I didn't write about him. My new book, it takes a counter-revolution, Wake Up America. I add to the 10 most wanted, terrible federal judges. I call them the Judicial Hall of Shame, Federal Judicial Hall of Shame. Initially, in the first book, there were 10. Now there's 20. If I had enough paper, which is a shortage of paper today because of the supply chain crisis, really? It could have been a 3,000-page work on the tyranny on the federal bench, but I had to limit it to 20. And most of the new 10 are dealing with judges who are throwing the peaceful protesters in prison, basically to try to quell dissent, doing the bidding of the establishments of both political parties. See, and here's the dirty little secret too. The Republicans want Trump on too. The people like Ted Cruz, people like Marco Rubio, people like Lindsey Graham, they play the game because they want to try to, woo his supporters over to them.
Right.
But if they had the chance, they'd slit his throat because they want to run for president. And in fact, they tried, years ago, but Trump happened to win. So they decided to play, a sleazy game. I mean, Lindsey Graham is perhaps the best example of that. And all of a sudden they become supporters. And then those people out there who also were viciously against Trump, including Sean Hannity, including Mark Levin, including others, Breitbart, that area, and Glenn Beck, all of a sudden they become Trump supporters, because if they're not Trump supporters, they freeze themselves out of what was then, a movement. But they'll be happy to see Trump gone because, they never supported him in the first place. Most of them were backing Ted Cruz at the time. Ted Cruz, who shoots his mouth off but does little to nothing otherwise, including, when his people in Texas were freezing because of an energy crisis, he went off to Cancun to sit on the beach. So this is what you're dealing with in both political parties, and it's why we need a new government, and we need more political parties that are competitive with the Democrats and the Republicans, and I'm forming one, the New American Independence Party, separately. And we need competition. But the whole lot of these, these characters that run our government, for lack of a better word, are, if you're a Democrat, destroying it, and if you're a Republican, you're out there raising money hand over fist so you can retain power. That's what's going on right now. So, Jason, take it away with your video and explain to us what has been disclosed with regard to Hillary Clinton and the people in and around Hillary Clinton, like Barack Obama, President at the time, Vice President Joe Biden, and Director of the CIA, John Brennan.
Absolutely, Larry. One quick question before we do that, just about this Elias Law Group. I find it strange that he is not the managing partner. Why have they taken his name as the name of the firm if Hannah Eves is the managing partner?
Well, probably because they know what's coming, okay, and they're preparing for it. Yeah, I frankly believe, just my opinion, that there's a good chance Elias winds up getting indicted. He's at the level that's expendable. Hillary won't be touched. Let me tell you one other quick story, and then we'll move on. Is that during the days that I ran Judicial Watch, a person came to me by the name of Peter Paul. And you can read about it in my second book, Whores, Why and How I Came to Fight the Establishment. You can still get that out at Amazon and Barnes and Noble. There's still copies out there. It's my autobiography. And Peter Paul said to me, as chairman of Judicial Watch, general counsel, if you represent me in a criminal investigation that I know the Justice Department is conducting, securities fraud and banking fraud, I will give you the evidence that I put on a Hollywood tribute to Bill Clinton and arranged for nearly $2 million in hard money contributions. I've got the checks, I've got photographs, I've got everything. And we agreed to represent him if he would come forward with that. We then took it to the George W. Bush Justice Department with John Ashcroft and the head of the criminal division. And they put, if you can believe it, Bruce Orr on the case. He was head of the, Bruce Orr, head of the crime task force. And anyway, they never wound up indicting Hillary. Hillary was behind it, and so was Bill Clinton. But they wound up indicting Peter, okay, amazingly enough. And he wound up doing 10 years in prison, either in actual prison or under house arrest. And they never touched Hillary. However, they did indict the campaign finance manager of Hillary, Jeffrey Rosen. And he was tried in LA, in the Central District of California. And they did that because they had to get somebody. So they got him, but they didn't leave Hillary. They didn't indict her. They left her alone, as usual. Anyway, the jury acquitted Jeffrey Rosen because they couldn't figure out why Jeffrey Rosen was being made the scapegoat. It was jury nullification, and Hillary wasn't there as a defendant. So this is the way it works. You burn somebody like Rosen. Okay, so they may burn Elias, they may burn, and they've already attempted to burn Michael Sussman of Perkins Coie, and perhaps the guy who released the information that you're going to talk about, but they'll never touch Hillary because there by the grace of God go thee. If you go after our higher ups, we'll go after your higher ups. It's mutual assured destruction. That's the way it works, and that's why I do today at Freedom Watch what I used to do at Judicial Watch, not just documents, mostly documents, but we're now, creating the people's legal system to hold these criminals accountable, as alleged, by citizens' grand juries and trials and elsewhere. Because if we don't do it, this will continue on and on and on. Hillary Clinton has been involved in, and so has Bill, in going on now 50 scandals, 50. Everything from Vince Foster to Filegate to Travelgate to Taxgate, you name it, whatever gate, to the Clinton Foundation, laundering money to the Clinton Foundation. No one ever holds them accountable. They're above the law. They're more than a protected species. They're untouchable. So therefore, we the people must do it on our own. But as far as someone like Elias, he could get tagged because he's not high enough on the chain that Durham is going to think twice about indicting.
I got to say, Larry, I know where you're coming from. I share your sentiments, but I hope this is the time where it changes, because we're in trouble if it doesn't. This can't keep going on forever. But the guy that you're talking about, who's been named in this indictment, and it's important that we
It's not an
reiterate this guy.
indictment, it's a pleading. And again, these are
Right.
allegations. So I'm not saying he did it. Okay. What I'm saying is that if they go after somebody, it will be after at his level or below, but not at the Hillary level. Now you can hope, Jason, but I'm 70 years old. I'll be 71 in July. Okay. I've been doing this for a very long time. I've never been wrong, as you will admit. It ain't going to happen. Okay. And,
but never isn't over yet. It's not over yet, Larry. I got to hope. We got to hold out hope, or we have nothing. And what I meant was,
no, you have God, and God will wreak his divine providence. But let me tell you, Jason, it isn't going to happen. Okay, but let's move on.
Right. So what I meant to say was not that Rodney Jaffe has been indicted, but he is named as Tech Executive 1 in the indictment of Sussman. And there was a lot of speculation when that first indictment came down. Who is Tech Executive 1? People thought it was Eric Schmidt or somebody, fancy that we've heard of. I don't think too many people have heard of this guy, Rodney Jaffe, unless you are in, the tech industry. He was an executive at a company called Neustar. And I can't say that I have heard of Neustar before all this came down. So we don't quite know exactly what it is that Neustar was contracted to do for the government. But the idea is this Neustar company was doing something with cybersecurity or internet information having to do with the White House. And I mean, this raises a concern on its own that we have these private companies that have contracts for security with the White House. Everybody is super into diversity and hiring people from all kinds of countries who hate America. I don't really know if we are comfortable with the idea of contractors to the government having access to top secret information, and particularly not when we hear about people like this guy Jaffe potentially using that information for things that they are not authorized to do with it. And that is basically...
And all these are allegations. Let's make that
the
clear.
Allegation.
Okay.
That is the allegation.
Yeah, let's make it clear. But, unfortunately, Jason, the government has to function this way. That's why you get security clearances. That's why people sign confidentiality agreements. That's why if you release this information, you can be subject to criminal prosecution. And I don't know if it's true anymore at all, but if you release some types of classified information, you used to be able to be eligible for the death penalty. Okay. And,
right.
But this is not that kind of information, so it's not really applicable. It's if you disclose the identity of a CIA agent or something like that, which can subject him to physical harm. But yes, I mean, this is the way the government functions, the way it has to function. I mean, you've got, Boeing, you've got McDonnell Douglas, you've got Grumman, you've got others, and they have to have people working for them that have access to highly classified information that for defense purposes. So, but when you violate something like this, then you have to pay the price.
Let me read you a little bit of what the Wall Street Journal is saying about this. While a partner at the law firm Perkins Coie, the filing said, Mr. Sussman represented a tech executive who was working with researchers at the Georgia Institute of Technology to examine internet data, including from Trump Tower and the White House. Now, I want our viewers to realize, Larry, this is some legal writer here for the Wall Street Journal giving us his interpretation of a filing written by attorneys who work for Durham. So there's a lot of interpretation from what actually happened to what we're reading right here. And just to share a little bit of knowledge I've gained from my personal experience, lawyers and judges are very, very knowledgeable of the law. But when you're dealing with a case that has a controversy that delves into technologically complicated things or anything that requires a level of sophistication to even understand, it gets very tricky because we need to rely on experts and the interpretation of complicated things in order to understand the story of what's going on. And what I've seen, Larry, is there's a lot of opportunity for malicious people to fool lawyers and even judges with complicated technical stuff. So we really need to get a very good understanding of what this company Neustar was intended to do and then what actually happened, because this says they're doing research with internet data. That could mean anything.
Well, very well put, Jason. And that's where you come in. I mean, you have the capability and technical expertise to understand it.
Yeah.
So
they're saying that
we can
they had access
be a
to
witness at our trial, okay, and also at the citizens' grand jury to explain the technical aspect of what went on.
Yeah. So the filing went on to say that the tech executive, who isn't named but is identifiable as Rodney Jaffe of the Washington area tech company Neustar, had access to dedicated executive office of the president's servers through a sensitive arrangement and used it in order to gather derogatory information about Donald Trump. Now, I mean, this is an extremely vague term, because when they say gather, notice that's not in the quotes. This could have been to fabricate derogatory information about Mr. Trump, because I don't think he would be deliberately storing derogatory information on his own servers. And this also, Larry, it looks to me to be very similar to the activities that many of these opposition research types of firms engage in. They want to take a small piece of evidence and then link it to something that perhaps is not quite factual so that they can plead it in a case like this. And again, as you said earlier, it's not necessarily about whether they win or lose this case. They want an indictment in place while the election is happening to either have a weight around Trump's neck or to just completely obviate his ability to run at all. People need to understand the strategic value.
Well, that's going to happen, okay? And it's apart from what's going on now. But President Trump has been under investigation by New York State district attorneys, Attorney General, and also the district attorney in New York, formerly Cyrus Vance. Now there's a new one. When you see his own accountants coming out, and which is contrary to their ethics, okay, and saying that nothing that we did for him can be verified, that it's not accurate, and then that tells you that they were given immunity by these prosecutors.
Well, let me stop you for a second, because Charles gave us some details on that. It wasn't necessarily that they said it wasn't accurate. It was that they said that it wasn't an independent audit and that it was just...
They said it wasn't, they cannot verify that it's reliable. That's what they said. Accountants not going to do that. Do you think these accountants will get any business in the future? They're trying to keep themselves out of prison because they've been threatened with being indicted too. And they made them a witness. They made them a government witness. So that's what this is about. You don't, if I'm a lawyer, okay, I don't go out and reveal attorney-client information. And accountants have an ethics code too.
But they don't have that attorney-client privilege. Certified public accountants are supposed to tell the public if they find wrongdoing in the books.
They have a fiduciary duty to the people they work for, and they have to answer to the Board of Accounting. I don't know specifically what it's called in New York, but their license can be yanked if you do something like that, at a minimum. Plus, a countersuit by Trump, in terms of the accuracy. But Trump's not going to sue them because he doesn't want to put them in a defensive position where they have to reveal more. Because once you sue, accountant or a lawyer, there's no longer any privilege. Okay, it's all out there, and they can use it to defend themselves. So I'm not saying that any indictment would be valid against Trump. What I'm saying is 100%, Jason, these accountants have decided to cooperate with the prosecutors.
Wow. All right. Well, that's interesting. I mean, definitely they've trying to sink Trump for sure. I want to find out more about what Neustar was doing, but this article goes on to tell us that prosecutors said that Sussman had used this data that Jaffe obtained to back up his assertions to the government that suspicious internet traffic was happening between Trump's New York City apartment building, the White House, and a Russian mobile phone provider identified as Yodaphone. And this was also where the information about this Alpha Bank came from. I never heard of Yodaphone. I don't know why Trump would be using Yodaphone. Googling Yodaphone tells us that the company behind it is bankrupt in 2019. I don't know what that really tells us, but It's going to be interesting, Larry, to learn what the nature of the information was, what the nature of this contract with the White House was. But as you said, there's all these thorny complications. If this was some sort of classified information they were dealing with, it's surely going to be national security issues that will prevent them from bringing these facts out in open court. They could shut the whole thing down like that. Hillary knows how to do this. High-level lawyer.
Why don't you play your clip, Jason? I think people will.
Oh, yes, right. I forgot to do that.
Yeah.
So here's Hillary.
You confronted her earlier today. I didn't know you were doing it, but this is very entertaining, and it's a nice picture of you.
Thank you very much. Oh, yeah. Well, the picture of me was in the New York Post and also the Daily Mail. They had, photographers there, and people could see me here with Charles just behind the camera. I'm yelling at Hillary, and I was also basically chiding her Secret Service agents, saying, how can you protect this person? You should be arresting her for spying on the President of the United States. And we can even get into some of the comments that she made here. This was at the Sheraton on 55th Street here in New York. She was speaking at the New York DNC or something like that, some kind of New York Democrat convention. Let me just play here for you, Larry, the clip of Hillary arriving in her famous van.
No, she uses a Mercedes.
This is lowbrow, too lowbrow. We'll find out.
It's probably Bill de Blasio looking for a free lunch.
No vaccine mandate! No vaccine
Lock her up for spying on the President of the United States! You're a vile, disgusting criminal! Let's go. I recommended that they lock her up for spying on the President of the United States. Oh, I should have let it play that part while I'm yelling at the Secret Service.
Well done.
Let me play this for you, Larry. The Secret Service really got a yelling at here.
Not gonna win.
Well, people can see the full clip. I've lost it there. People can see the full clip on Crowdsource the Truth, but I want those guys to really think about what they're doing. I mean, they're not protecting a person. They're supposed to protect an office. They're supposed to protect the President of the United States.
They're obligated to protect her physical safety. No one wishes her any harm in that regard. I mean, they're just, this is the lowest rung, not the lowest, but it's one of the lowest rungs of the Secret Service in that sense. And, to protect ex-presidents and ex-first ladies, and they do what they're told. You can't blame them. They are simply following so-called orders.
Well, that's what the Nazis used to say, isn't it?
Yeah, but to protect somebody is not the equivalent of, they don't have the right to arrest her for a crime before she's.
I'm not saying they should arrest her, but I would quit that job if I were in their position.
I would too. Yeah, I would.
So let's, for a second, Larry, let's examine this new star and see what it is that they do. It's a TransUnion company. Partners. Let's see who's in this. Well, Google, Amazon. Well, we seem to know a lot of these companies, and Facebook. These are all shutting down Twitter. Interesting. So this thing is connected to all these companies that have the ability to shut down things like Crowdsource the Truth. And I wonder who is corporate social responsibility. Wow. Careers. Does it tell us who is in this company? So then it was the Communication Industries Services Operating Unit within Lockheed Martin, Larry. That's interesting, isn't it? It won its original contract to provide local number portability services to select regions through North America. I remember when they brought that about, phone number portability. I liked that a lot because I was a frequent upgrader of mobile phones and I always had to change the number. So these guys, I guess, were involved with the technology that allows you to keep that phone number. Interesting.
Right.
They'll know things about your phone and you in order to do that.
Yeah.
So then they talk about this. This is spoken about in the filing, this North American numbering plan. They're the administrator. So they're going to know who has what phone number, and this will be a very accurate database because it allows you to transfer your phone number to a new phone. It'll be up to the minute. This is interesting. I almost anticipated that it was something like this because, Larry, people have seen that I frequently call people. I've called Dershowitz, I called Bernard Kerik, I call all kinds of people. And the database that I use is a publicly available database that's maybe 75% accurate. And I had the question in my mind, you know, when you don't have the ability to find somebody's phone number, you really can't communicate with them. And when you have the phone number, you can open up all kinds of doors. So there's a lot of power in having this information and having the ability to contact people and reach them. And as you increase the accuracy of that, if you had something that was 99% accurate, that might be extremely valuable. The other thing is this company, well, not the company, but somehow Rodney Jaffe's access to this North American numbering plan was lost at some point, and then he became involved in the DNS, the domain name systems, which is sort of similar, I guess, in concept to this. It's the website equivalent. You know, your web address is like your phone number on the internet. And I think there's probably even more information that can be gotten from the DNS entries. It seems to be implied in some of the writing about this that it would allow them to basically spy on all the internet traffic. I don't know if that's correct or incorrect, but again, we really need to dig into these details to understand technologically what was going on, and we're just at the very beginning of this. Now, I have another thing that I'm very worried about with regard to this entire investigation, Durham, Barr, etc. Because we've seen this happen several times, Larry. I always thought this QAnon thing was a stupid distraction and a trap. And I believe it was used to trap certain people on January 6th. And now anybody who is associated with that gets smeared as a conspiracy theorist. And they've even said that it's a terrorist organization or whatever. And it seems to be a technique where they create an entity or a person and they elevate that thing so that people are following it and celebrating it, and then they do something to sour that thing or to sour that person and make a point out of anybody who followed it or was a supporter of it. They say, see, that thing is terrible and you supported it, you're terrible. I'm very concerned.
You're right, and you see that in the proceedings that are going on in the District of Columbia, where people were not active participants in Proud Boys or Oath Keepers or whatever, but they're being smeared with that, and judges are citing that and want to put them away, in prison on behalf of the establishments of both political parties. And let there be no mistake, is that both political parties want to see the January 6th protesters thrown in the slammer, except for a few exceptions, in the Republican Party who claim that they don't. And that's another thing about what Trump said. I know I'm off the point here, but
it's all right.
Somebody's got to say it, because Fox News won't say it, because they're currying favor. They're creating false impressions about things to boost ratings. But President Trump going out there a few weeks ago and saying, when I'm president, I'll give you pardons to the January 6th protesters. That's not worth the paper it's written on. All of these protesters, most of them will have already served any sentence that they've got. There's nothing he can do to help them right now. Another fundraising method by these consultants in and around Donald Trump. We have to call a spade a spade. I supported the president. I still wish him well. He's done very good things. But what's going on right now has become the equivalent of a racketeering fundraising operation. And there is no integrity in either the Democrat or the Republican Party. And the American people need to move on and do it for themselves with the divine providence of God. And that's the bottom line here. So although we're going through the information that Durham has claimed to have obtained, we will not rely on Durham, because he is not going to go to the top. He'll burn a few more people at the lower and mid-level and call it a day. That is, if he wants any future in any governmental type position, which he currently holds.
Yeah. Larry, I've also become concerned lately about Trump. He's been supporting and lauding Mike Lindell. And I know a lot of people like Mike Lindell, but of course, Mike Lindell, I think, played a major role in screwing up any hope of having any real legal case after the election. He was a big supporter of Sidney Powell, and we know that the head of her fundraiser.
I don't know that, Jason. I don't know it, and I'm not going to
subscribe
to it. I'm not going to subscribe to that. No offense, okay? I don't know. Okay, but I do believe that Mike Lindell was well-intentioned. I believe Hook will have come to him and defrauded him and led him down the primrose path.
Well, let's
And
agree to
I
disagree.
do believe that he also led President
Hang
Trump
on.
down the primrose path, but I don't want to get into this here.
Well, then we'll agree to disagree, because I
All
don't
right, you
think
can
Mike
disagree,
Lindell is
but leave
helping
Sidney Powell
anybody.
alone and the rest alone. I don't know. Okay,
Okay.
so they're not the subject of the citizens' grand jury right now.
Right. Let's get back to the issues with Mark Elias. So he seems to be the next guy on the chopping block for potentially Durham's investigation, or certainly Jaffe seems quite close to being indicted. What do you anticipate will happen next here, Larry?
Well, this thing will drag on, for months, if not years, and they'll create the appearance that they're getting to the bottom of it, and they'll perhaps indict, a few more people at the middle level or lower level, and that'll be it. And frankly, the cases are now in the District of Columbia. There is no way that a District of Columbia jury will convict any of them. Won't happen. A location where you have 92+% of the people, mostly government workers and otherwise, having voted for Obama and then Biden. And it's not going to happen, Jason, and that's the bottom line. So that's why we have to do it, and we have to do it in a neutral setting, and we will do it with jurors who can make a neutral decision. But it's not going to happen in the District of Columbia. And I'll tell you something, I've been watching Andrew McCarthy, who does some commentary on Fox News from time to time. And Andrew's right. I mean, he's a smart guy. And he basically said even the indictment against Sussman, the way they structured it is weak. But even if it wasn't, there ain't no way in hell a District of Columbia jury will convict people who are supportive of Hillary Clinton in the District of Columbia. It won't happen.
I fear you're right. This article in the New York Post tells us that Jaffe started a company that was involved in domain name services and cloud-based internet hosting, and that company was bought for $62 million by this New Star thing, which was spun out of or somehow came from Lockheed Martin. This is a defense company, and this is cyber war that we're looking at right here. I think a lot of people don't realize the extent to which we are in a cyber war. When Twitter can prevent news about Hunter Biden's laptop from getting out to the public, and that affects the election, I think we're in cyber war 1 right now, Larry. And this guy, Jaffe, and the other people who are being investigated right now may have been preparing for or engaging in this for many years.
That's very possible. And, where there's smoke, there's fire. Like I said, do bears live in the woods? Okay. Does 2 and 2 equal 4? Of course, in today's world, 2 and 2 doesn't equal 4 because some minorities don't know that 2 and 2 equals 4, so that's racist. But this is logic, and in my mind, these things are very, very serious. They're things we're putting in front of our grand jury, and I'm convinced that we will find additional evidence to link Hillary Clinton to this, and we will have her indicted along with Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and John Brennan, and others, and look for the American people to carry it out. And Jason, just about 4 months ago, 140 plus former retired admirals and generals wrote a letter to Joe Biden telling him to shape up or ship out. They were not going to let this country go under, much less become communist or socialist or whatever. I believe that the military and the police will carry out any conviction we get and sentence. And they understand the severity of what's going on. And that will not be a coup d'etat. That will be valid legal process. And as I've said before, notwithstanding what Scalia wrote in United States versus Williams about the fact the grand jury belongs to the American people, and that also applies to citizen trials, as long as they're done fairly. But in addition to that, as it says in our Declaration of Independence, is that when the sovereign no longer represents the people under the laws of nature and nature's God, they have a right to alter or abolish that government, etc. They were not looking to the law of the king. They were not looking to the law of the state. The colonies took back our legal system because King George had taken it away from us, the criminal justice system, back to London. We are now doing the same thing. So those who question our legitimacy is contained directly in the Declaration of Independence. It was the basis upon which this nation was formed on July 4th, 1776. And now is the time. I go throughout this country, Jason, we're wrapping it up, and I talk to people and I get their approach to things. And I can tell you the overwhelming majority of people are on our side, but most of them are scared. They're scared because the FBI has been used as a Gestapo, because COVID-19 has been used as a pretext to take total control of the American people. They're scared because they can no longer afford to support their families because of rampant inflation and because money's being dumped into the economy and there aren't workers, creating the supply chain crisis, also increasing the inflationary pressures. They're scared because the left has made it so that rampant crime is running through the streets to destabilize the country. They're scared about their children. And while they need to exercise their Second Amendment rights and arm up, then there's an effort also by the left to take guns away from the American people to let them protect themselves. And last but not least, we're on the verge, in my opinion, and I'm an international lawyer and I've studied overseas and I speak 3 languages. Some people even think English. And I can get by in Spanish as well. English.
Is it French and Hebrew?
And a French and Italian I'm fluent in.
Italian.
I don't speak Hebrew, unfortunately. When they dropped me off at Hebrew school, I went to go play touch football and came back. And my mother thought I was there. I wish I did speak Hebrew because I love Israel. I wish I could do that. And I speak Spanish, spending time in Miami, but I'm not fluent in the Spanish. But, you know, we're on the verge of a major explosion worldwide, not just with Russia and Ukraine, but in Korea, North Korea, and Iran, in other parts of the world. And
how about Canada?
Because our military has been defiled, dishonored, disrespected. They've been used for political wars, for political purposes. They've been hung out to dry. They've been killed for no reason at all. We've accomplished little to nothing, particularly since 9/11, because they're all back again. They're now running across the southern border, a lot of them, and there's no borders anymore because the Democrats, want to get what they think will someday be Democrat voters. But this is where we are. For those people that are sitting around and think that watching Sean Hannity or people like that, or listening to Mark Levin or others on the radio is enough. No, it's not. Not if you care about your children and grandchildren and future generations. And as I've said many, many times, our founding fathers, Jefferson and Washington in particular, were so wealthy that even with inflation, they would be millionaires in today's world. And they risked everything because they understood what was going to happen, that they'd be living in a dictatorship. And King George III was nothing. He was Mother Teresa compared to the people who are in control of this country today. He was not a socialist. He was not a communist. He was not an atheist. He was not a member of the radical Marxian Jewish left. He was not a radical Black. He was not a radical gay, lesbian, transgender, or transsexual. He was not a radical feminist. He simply wanted to overtax us to pay for the rest of his empire. And he was a Christian. And consequently, I left out radical Muslims in that, so the Christian thing comes in. And I've said, most people in these groups just want to be left alone and they deserve their rights as long as they don't harm anybody else. But the people that have now seized control of this country want to harm us. They want us, I frankly think they want us dead. So we have to fight back. And what we're trying to do at Freedom Watch is to do it peacefully and legally with valid legal means, valid process, and a legal means. But if we do not succeed, as Jefferson predicted, and I will not be the one that lights the match, there are others in this country that will get violent and it will get bloody. And Jefferson predicted that. He said, every 20 years or so, there will be a violent revolution. What's a few thousand dead to refresh the tree of liberty? And there'll be a lot more than a few thousand if we don't succeed at what we're doing now. So for those people that are out there, not our supporters, not our citizens' grand juries, but for those who think that they can sit around in retirement if they're a senior counting their shekels, counting their money, figuring that they're going to go play golf or tennis or do whatever they do, go to parties, drink, have fun. They think it's enough that they watch Sean Hannity and people like that. That's criminal in of itself, because if you have kids and grandkids, and you can't let them come into a world that we now see has taken hold. And if you are middle-aged or young, you don't want to live in this world. So it's very important that we all rise up. And we see, notwithstanding the January 6th peaceful protesters, we see the first manifestations of a violent revolution, not just in this country, but in Canada and worldwide, because the ruling elite, the arrogant ruling elite in all of these countries think that they're better than the rest of the people. They think they're like King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. After me, the flood. I don't care what happens after me. And now you can see the pretty boy up there in Canada, Pierre Trudeau, recently photographed these strange socks and shoes, shaking Joe Biden's hand, kind of like the alter ego of Gavin Newsom. Is that they're about ready to remove him up there in Canada. And let's salute the Canadian truckers, because they have shown the most courage short of the January 6th protesters so far, and it's coming to a hometown near you very soon. And
Larry,
what they did was what Henry David Thoreau wrote about in Walden Pond, civil disobedience. That's what Martin Luther King did. Peaceful civil disobedience. That's what Lech Walesa did in Poland when he and Pope John Paul II and Reagan and Margaret Thatcher broke the back of the Soviet Empire, which is, of course, now they're trying to reconstitute it, beginning with Ukraine. The people in this country and worldwide need to rise up, because these despots that are controlling our governments are in it for themselves. They're not in it for us. And many of them are evil leftists, I believe, literally inhabited by the devil. And with God's divine providence, as our founding fathers invoked on July 4th, 1776, if we rise up to help ourselves, the Father and the Son will be with us. And we cannot be afraid, and we must pay the price, and we must take risks. It's not enough, like Mark Levin, to write a book, American Marxism, and say, okay, just go protest, go do boycotts. Fine, that's okay. But we have to do more than that. We have to take back our legal system. We have to create a new government. We have to have honest leaders like George Washington or Ronald Reagan in the modern era. And we don't need leaders that just look to pick a fight for the sake thereof and piss everybody off. We need leaders who can help unite as many people as possible. And regardless of their good intentions and what they do, we need a leader like George Washington or Ronald Reagan. And we will find them. And we will assert new political parties in competition with these two corrupt political parties. And we will save this country with the grace of God.
Larry, I think a lot of our viewers are keeping their eyes on the Freedom Convoy in Canada. Justin Trudeau announced that Canadian banks are going to be seizing the accounts, ostensibly just taking money from these truckers. What do you think? I mean, I know this is Canada, but could this happen in America?
Well, it does happen. I mean, the IRS can seize accounts without due process. They can do it if they want. Sure.
Wow.
Obama and presumably Biden has an enemies list, of people that they consider to be subversive. No one knows who's on it. We see what they're doing to the peaceful protesters. And look at Justin Trudeau. There's a good example. Someone who was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. I mean, the guy is a kid. He's not serious. And these truckers who are tough people, and work hard for a living, see this guy with his little curly Q haircut and his fancy socks.
Ducky socks.
Yeah, and they say, this guy is ruining our life with vaccine mandates and masks and everything else. This guy's about ready to be removed. They've circled the Capitol up there. And
really?
Oh, yeah, the truckers in Ottawa have completely blocked in the Capitol, even though they've succeeded in breaking the blockade for commerce into the United States. They're about ready to remove them forcefully up there.
It's a very interesting time, Larry. I think people are very concerned about what's going to happen, but I want to make sure that our viewers know that they can help. There's a lot of people who feel helpless right now, and people can participate in the Citizens Grand Jury, Larry. They can also visit freedomwatchusa.org, and people can donate. Your financial contributions to Freedom Watch are tax deductible, and they help Larry and his team at Freedom Watch assemble the Citizens Grand Juries and do all the work that we would expect the Department of Justice to do. But the bravest attorney in America, Larry Klayman, is doing it. So if you want to participate, go over to freedomwatchusa.org. Your contribution of $100 or more will get you a copy of Larry's new book, It Takes a Counter-Revolution, Wake Up America, as well as a copy of the precursor to this book. So it's a very good value.
Well said. And go over to americassheriff.org, which I formed with Sheriff Joe Arpaio to protect our valiant police. Americassheriff.org, 2 S's in the middle, and support that as well. And a contribution, like we're just talking about, will also get you both books over there. And Sheriff Arpaio himself has written a book. And here's a guy that was never afraid of anything. He's almost 90 years old. He still looks like he's in his 60s. He's the Energizer Bunny, and we're doing what we can to protect the police so they will protect you.
That's absolutely true. And Sheriff Joe is an absolutely fantastic guy. I hope that people will support America's Sheriff and Freedom Watch. And remember, you can support Crowdsource the Truth by going to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and becoming a sponsor. You're going to get access to a huge library of sponsor-exclusive content, and you help keep the show going. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Larry, last word before we go?
Well, I want to thank you, Jason, for what you do, because you give us the opportunity to reach the American people. You are super smart. You are excellent in audiovisual, and we need people like you to try to change the way people think in this country. And one thing I didn't mention was not only, and I talk about it in my book right in the beginning, this 6 or 7 part plan by the left, which has all but destroyed the country, but they're destroying Judeo-Christian values and ethics. And we can see that with what's going on in the schools, not just with critical race theory, but pushing homosexuality, transgenderism, transsexualism. There's also cases that have come out in the last few weeks where kids who are confused, they don't know what they are being told by teachers with directions not to tell their parents that they'll take them for a sex change operation. They can get it paid for either by an insurance company or through Obamacare or both. And in fact, in the state of Washington, which is even further left than California, they passed a law that if you are 13 years or older, that you can get a sex change operation, and insurance companies have to pay for it, and the insurance companies do not and are prohibited from telling the parents.
That's crazy.
This is unbelievable, and kids are confused. They say, hey, that's neat. Maybe I want to be a girl or a boy, notwithstanding the pronouns. So they're destroying the distinction between man and woman. The left is continuing to kill millions of babies, unborn babies. And if you believe in God, Jason, and I know you do, but if any of you believe in God, and you think God's just sitting around twiddling his thumb saying, oh, that's nice, and isn't going to extract some kind of what we're now going through, a major warning, or for that matter, do business, then you live in another world. If you believe in God, you can't believe that what we're going through is accidental. I don't believe that the deprivation that we're now experiencing, frankly, is from the devil. I believe it's God sending us a warning, saying, shape up or ship out, because you have defiled me, you've defiled the 10 Commandments, you have disobeyed the Talmud, which are my rules. You've disobeyed the New Testament and the Old Testament, all rolled into one. And you, the American people and others around, are going to pay the price if you think you can continue this. So take that to heart, because God is not countenancing destroying the difference between man and woman, and he's not countenancing killing all of these newborn babies. If you've ever had a child and you see the miracle of having a child, how can you look yourself in the mirror as a human being if you kill an unborn baby? And under our current law in most states, you can do that almost up to the point of birth. And in some states, even afterwards, as the former governor of Virginia suggested, could be done there.
I tell you, Larry, it's I don't know. There's a lot.
Ed, I'm
It's hard,
going to
it's
have
hard
to
to
run.
find
Jason.
words. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
I have to run. But thank you for everything you do. God bless you.
Thank you, Larry.